So the beaver is an excellent representative of that, and the otter is very, very close to the beaver in the Blackfoot stories. And in fact, during these negotiations, during this kind of hostage situation, there's a point where the human being is not being particularly reasonable, and it's because he's being guided by a spirit. So there is actually a reason behind it, but the otter feels like the human is not being reasonable in the negotiations, and so he addresses all the other animals and just basically says, the nerve of this human being. They've only just arrived here, and why are we even giving any kind of audience to the demands of this lowly creature? These humans are soft, they're slow, they're weak, they can't fly, they can't swim worth a damn, they run very slow, they don't have much strength. They're basically pitiful. So instead of listening to these demands, why don't we just all gang up on this human and eat him? And it's a serious consideration in the context of this story, but eventually the older, the kind of grandfather beaver says, no, we're not going to eat this guy. We could, but we won't, because if we do, there are so many other humans, and they will find out what we've done. Inevitably, some way it'll be found out. And if they learn that we just ate him, then they'll consider us their enemies, and they'll be afraid of us when they see us, and they'll just kill us out of that fear. But instead of being afraid of them, we're going to teach them, we're going to give them some of our knowledge about how to live in this place, and they're going to learn from us, and because of that relationship, they'll respect us in the future, and they're not just going to kill us. And so this kind of sets the stage for the origin of the beaver bundle, where all the different animals contribute some of their knowledge, and this is the foundation of really kind of like a Blackfoot way of life here in this territory of the Upper Saskatchewan and Upper Missouri drainage basins. And the otter is represented in that bundle. There's about 23 songs with things that the otter gave to humans, but also his robe is in there, and from his mouth there's a human scalp. And I always see this as kind of a reminder. That human scalp in his mouth is kind of, I see it as kind of a reminder that it could have went the other way, that they could have eaten us, but they chose not to, and they do choose not to eat us most of the time. And instead of that being our relationship as prey to the animals, they have made treaty with us to live here with them if we respect them, and we respect that they know better how to live here, and that our project today is one of learning to adapt to the life of this place and emulate as best as possible that key model of the beaver, whose every aspect of his way of life serves to host the lives of others. So this is why I want to include the otter, because it's a reminder of that. And because it's the otter that really, first of all, was fierce enough to suggest that we don't have to put up with this, and yet humble enough to recognize that the beaver's advice was correct, and to go with that. But it's a good reminder, I think, to me. The otter is very associated with fighting skills as part of what he gave at that time, and fighting skills and movement. And so I wanted to use the otter as, I look at the otter as a very powerful underwater animal, who evokes so many things. The land animal that I want to include that makes the most sense to me is the prairie rattlesnake. And of course, people who've followed my channel or who know me know that I have a connection with the snakes, a long time connection that goes back to when I was just a very young child, like 5 years old. I started connecting with the snakes, and I've maintained that connection to this day in various ways. Certainly today the connection is in the sense that I am the lead on a conservation project here in the city where I live, where we are trying to maintain a rattlesnake population, a wild rattlesnake population, in an area that is being overtaken by suburban development and subdivisions. And so it's a big challenge for me. The everyday work is basically just going out, volunteering to go out on calls to pick up rattlesnakes that people are encountering in their yards and such. But the larger project, and I have a Facebook page related to this called Rattlesnakes at Lethbridge, is to try to get the nearly 100,000 residents of Lethbridge, the city where I live, comfortable with coexisting with these snakes as the snakes become more and more synanthropic, because we've taken over their territory. Now our residential areas, our subdivisions, become their territory. That's where the food sources, the mice have gone to, and that's where the snakes are going to go to. So I need to try as best I can to help people be comfortable living, coexisting with a fairly large rattlesnake population, and being proud of being a city of people who have that kind of presence of mind, who are engaged with nature enough to host that coexistence and embrace it. So I've got various strategies that I'm using to do that, including public display of the snake handling and such that I do, so that people get accustomed to seeing the snakes, get accustomed to seeing that they are not interested in chasing anyone or biting anyone, and that you really, really have to provoke a rattlesnake to get bit. But also I'm doing things like like naming the rattlesnakes that I encounter multiple times, and I'm identifying them by patterns on their backs. So it's a visual kind of identification rather than the typical using some kind of radio transmitter and those kind of things. I'm trying to demonstrate that there are other ways to relate to these animals, including getting to know them as individuals. And all of this has to do with the conservation of the project and, you know, partial fulfillment of my obligations as an Iochgimi, as a beaver man, to live up to the treaty that was made between the humans and the animals. I'm a natural candidate to lend a hand in the relationship with these snakes, so I'm doing so. At the same time, the snake's characteristics, which I think speak to my artistic project, are the fact that they are very kind of what would you call it? They live very humble lives. They're very simple. It's not a, you know, real complex existence. All they need are a few basic things to be relatively happy, and despite long-term persecution, they are resilient, and they're still here, and they're powerful, such that when people come across them, they don't have to do anything, and the people are very afraid. They feel the snake's powers. Of course, they got the swiftness of the strike. Of course, they are very unobtrusive. The snakes can live among people, for the most part, unseen. And, you know, they're very close to the earth. So there's all these different kinds of aspects of the rattlesnake, camouflage, that are worth emulating, and the fact that they are not interested in fighting with anybody. They'll give a fair warning before they hurt somebody. They don't want to hurt anybody. So all of this goes into that. And then the animal from the air that I'm interested in including is the magpie. Just like the bird that was just down here with me a few minutes ago, my pet magpie Derek. But ever since adopting Derek, I've become very fascinated with magpies and corvids in general, like crows and ravens and jays, magpies, and they are really representatives of the dinosaurs. They're really, really ancient beings, and they're super intelligent. I don't think that our scientists give them their due credit, because they are far and away more intelligent than dogs, if we even rate intelligence on the, you know, if we kind of like gauge it in the typical ways that we do. I would say that the corvids are, including magpies, are far more intelligent than dogs, but I would go further to say that they are actually more intelligent than we are. They have evolved to coexist with us. They're our partners in this life. But the thing about them that I always find amazing is their capacities for awareness. They are far more aware than we are of their environment and every little aspect of it, everybody who's in it, everything that's happening, that's new, that's in the moment, they're onto. We are really walking around in our environment like blind retards compared to the Corvids. They know what's going on, and the reason why they know what's going on is because they are the most magnificent opportunists. They are not really big on hunting. They will go, hunt insects and this kind of a thing. But more so often, they will live off the discards of less intelligent animals like ourselves. And so they're huge opportunists. And in order to survive as opportunists, they need to be extremely aware. They know all the animals in their environment as individuals, not just as, like somebody around here will look out their window and see bird or maybe robin or whatever, but they'll know exactly who that particular robin is, where it's living, what it's been doing here the whole season. They're very, very hyper aware of everything that's going on, and they can recognize one animal that's a threat compared to another animal of the same type who's not a threat. They have amazing visual acuity. I remember taking my bird outside, Derek outside, and there was one time he got frantic and darted indoors. He had been looking up, and I looked up, and it took me a while to search the sky, and I finally found the hawk that was way up there that he was panicked about. So that's how aware they are. They see it all, and in that respect, I think that is a characteristic that that I strive for. In Blackfoot, I call it alkakios, and the that high degree of awareness, and that is something that I would like to. That's something that I've been focused on for several years now, as I try to engage more with my environment, to become more of an opportunist like a corvid, to become a more successful at living in coexistence with other species, including humans, like the corvids do. There's so much of what they do that I want to emulate, but that awareness, that's kind of like, it's almost like the kind of awareness that is depicted in novels and films of Sherlock Holmes. That kind of awareness where they notice every little thing. It's important to try to train as much as we can, I think, that level of awareness. But it's, at this point, it's almost like a superhuman ability. I think in the future, depending on what we decide to do, it doesn't have to be a superhuman ability. It can be real. We can really have that kind of a degree of awareness, but we have to foster a life way, and we have to practice that awareness and make it important to us, as supporting our life in some manner, in order to bring ourselves to have that awareness naturally in the future. So those are the three animals: otter, rattlesnake, magpie. And I want to kind of make the logo in a circle, where I have the otter and rattlesnake and the magpie, like this, representing the air, land, and water in that order. Um, yeah, that's what I'm kind of having in mind. I'm not much of an artist myself, but at some point here I'll give it a shot to put something together. And ideally it'd be something very simple that could even be hand drawn at the spur of the moment. A really good logo, I think, should be like that. Shouldn't be too complicated. Should be easy enough that somebody could hand draw it, to repeat it. So anyway, that's what I was thinking about on my run today.